Okay, if I could get everybody gathered around the table, we'll go ahead and get started. So far in the class, after the first 2 meetings, we focused on hitting the cue ball where we're aiming. And that's a huge part of the game. You know, it allows you to make more shots, and really get more inspired about playing more pool and learning. Now, once you are able to hit where you're aiming, you're going to pocket a lot more balls. But at the same time, when you start playing in competition against your friends or a league or a tournament, you absolutely must learn to position the cue ball. And we actually learned 3 important strokes. We've learned how to stop the cue ball on a straight-in shot. We learned how to roll it forward by raising the finish. Nice smooth stroke. And also a little bit about the draw shot. I know a lot of people are still working on it. And trust me, all those things aren't as simple as they sound. You gotta look at pocket billiards as far as your development as a work in progress. Nobody ever masters this game. Even that person of that handout, Federer Gorst, the #1 player in the world, is still striving to improve his game, believe it or not. Now we're going to talk about position play and locating the cue ball in different places. Now, one of the things that's going to be real important, and I always do this drill in class, and it's kind of a fun drill, but when you do this, I know Nyla was actually shooting this earlier. Use a striped ball, put it on the spot here. Now we're trying to determine how straight our stroke is. Are we accelerating through the cue ball all the way through? That's why we put it on the spot, because you get immediate feedback, don't you? When you shoot with a ball on the spot here, you can see that your cue is going straight through. Now, the 6-time world snooker champion would practice this drill for 45 minutes a day, Steve Davis. And he's retired now as a commentator, but he was considered one of the greatest snooker players. And if you've never heard of snooker, that's done on a 6x12 table with very tiny pockets, okay? All right, now what am I going to do here? In fact, I'm going to cheat a little bit, which you can do. I'm going to put a piece of chalk in that diamond. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to practice shooting that 10 ball in the direct center of the table at that diamond and see how close it comes to coming back and hit the tip of my cue. But again, like when you're practicing or doing drills, the most important thing is every shot is a whole. It means continue to practice your pre-shot routine. Just like Federer Gorst said in the handout. Okay? Squaring up, breathe and relax. Right toe on the line. Swing down. Nice warm-up strokes. Now, that might have looked easy, but trust me, it wasn't. Anyway, I'd like you to try that just for fun today. Okay. Now, one of the things that I love about teaching this class is that you can learn a lot, but at the same time, you can have a lot of fun. I want to teach you a game before we get into position play that you might want to try. And I think it's one of the most fun pool games ever invented. Has anybody here ever played 3-ball? All right, a couple of you. All right, let me explain how it works. You can use any 3 balls on the table. You set them up in a diamond shape like this. And it is better if you freeze them together because then you'll get more power into the shot. Now I'm going to put all these balls in the pockets. Now the fun part of this game is that it's kind of important to make one of the balls on the object of the game is whoever can make all 3 balls in the fewest number of shots wins. And the interesting part is, if you're playing with 5 or 6 other people, if
Everybody throws $1 in.
yeah, and that's the way it usually works. Everybody puts so much money in it, and whoever wins gets the whole pot. But if you tie, if the 2 best tie, in other words, they did it in 4 strokes, then everything progresses to the next, and everybody gets 1 money. And I have to say that I remember playing in the bars in Alabama as an Air Force officer, that I made a lot of money playing. Anyway, you just try to make a ball and break, and a lot of times one of those wing balls will go 4 rails in. Oh, that would have helped a lot.
Yeah.
And you know what? I got really hard because I should have controlled the cue ball. By letting the cue ball and the break come to the rail here, that made it that much harder. But anyway, if you want to try that game today, have some fun with it.
On the break, does it matter if you're off center, or, like the cue ball, if you hit from the side a little bit, would that help?
Actually, every table is going to be a little bit different. I haven't really experimented with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've noticed some people
Yeah.
on the break head on, and some people break from the side.
All right. Well, it depends on the game. Like, for example, if you're playing 9-ball and the balls are racked in a diamond shape, you definitely want to break from the wings.
Okay.
Because then you have a corner ball that often goes in, and the head ball will often go inside. But in 8-ball, it's a little different. Okay. When you have all 15 balls on the table, you can break from the wing, but to get a good spread, breaking from somewhere near the center is probably to your advantage.
Okay.
But we'll get to that today because we're going to talk about 8.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, that's all right. All right, let's just start with a typical cut shot like this. Now, let's say that I'm going to hit this ball with a rolling ball. In other words, I'm going to do all my entire 3-shot routine, elevate my bridge, and I'm going to hit the cue ball high so it rolls. Okay, does anybody want to guess where the cue ball will hit this rail? Anybody have an idea?
The other side of the pocket.
All right, you think so? Okay. Anybody else? Good, Tom. Anybody else think it'll hit here, here, here? Do you know? Well, that's what we're going to learn today.
Use some right English for me.
All right. All right. All right.
Pocket speed, you're going to hit right here if you shoot.
Well, obviously, there's such a thing in pool, just like in geometry, called a tangent line. Okay? Let me explain that real quick. And I know this is a little bit technical, but I think it'll help a lot of you when you start playing more serious pool. But you'll notice my little tangent line finder. I'm going to go ahead and aim the arrow into that corner pocket. Now, if I shoot the 6-ball in the corner pocket, and I hit what's called a stun or a stop shot, the cue ball, I'm going to hit it dead center. It'll slide to here. And the tangent line is that 90-degree line that always deflects off the object ball. And that's why I've been telling you that the stop shot or the stun shot is the most important shot in pool. Because you can predict exactly where the cue ball is going. Now, a stun would be when you shoot a stop shot at an angle. A stop shot is when you're shooting the ball straight in. So what I want you to notice, if I hit a stun here, it'll follow this tangent line to here, angle in, angle out, and you can kind of predict where the cue ball is going. Okay? So you notice I'm just slightly below center. Angle in, angle out. Now that was a stun shot, as we call it. Now, we're going to forget about the tangent a little bit because I'm going to roll the cue ball now. Remember, the 3 shots you need to learn in this class is a rolling cue ball, a stop or stun, and a drop. All right, now, does anybody want to guess where the cue ball is going to hit this rail and this rail? Think about it for a second. It's a rolling cue ball. So isn't the ball going to beat this tangent to this side? Because when it pockets the 9, it'll have forward spin. So it'll start this way, and then the forward spin will kick in, won't it? So let's see where it goes. 2-shot routine, swing down, warm-up strokes. See how the cue ball beat the tangent line? It hit way over here because it had a forward roll. So look at the difference. This is why what you learn with those 3 strokes, you learn how to put the cue ball almost anywhere you want on the table. You notice the stun shot hit here. The rolling ball hit here. How about the draw? Where's the draw going to go? The backspin. This time we're going to put backspin on the cue ball. Okay? Any guesses? Anybody?
Would it be behind the tangent or the other side of the tangent?
Yeah, exactly. So let's see what happens. See how it grew past the tangent line and actually hit here. So the 3 basic strokes, rolling ball here, stun shot here, draw here. Now, one of the things that many people, when they're beginning to learn to play pool, they think, oh, I want to learn all that fancy English. That's a good idea, but you need to be able to master what I just showed you first. And then you can worry about all the fancy English. In other words, what is English exactly? To me, English is any time you hit either the left side or the right side of the cue ball. All right? And the biggest problem with that is when you hit one side of the cue ball or another, notice that the cue ball is round. So if that heavy cue tip hits the left side, the cue ball will deflect to the right. Hit the right side, it deflects to the left. So immediately you have an issue where you have to compensate for hitting one side of the ball to the other. But the reason why we use English is to gain position. You know, locate the cue ball where we need to. But we're not going to do English today, okay? All right.
At least not on purpose.
Yeah. All right, here's another shot. Now, I'm going to shoot the 3 ball in the side pocket. Now, I'm going to hit a rolling ball. Now we're going to play a guessing game again. If I roll the cue ball, in other words, I'll take my pre-shot routine, hit my cue tip above center, well above center. Now, first of all, where is the tangent line of the shot? Does anybody help me with that? What? Well, the tangent line is always based on a stun. In other words, where the cue ball is sliding like that. So you notice, if I put my finder out there, if I hit a stun shot from this angle, it's going to follow that arrow, isn't it? to the rail. So it'll come somewhere real close to the middle diamond. But if I hit a rolling ball, it's going to beat that tangent line to this side. And, you know, I've played enough pool, you know, like 60 years, so I can pretty much guess approximately where it's going to go. But that's what you know, as you progress and evolve as a pool player, you start to realize, well, if I hit that ball high with a rolling ball, it's going to go there, so I can position the ball properly for the next shot. So, look at the three shot routine, deep breath, relax, swing down, warm up strokes. Okay. The stun shot in here, rolling ball with here.
What happens if you get it even higher above center?
The higher you hit it, the quicker the ball's going to turn.
It's not gonna change where it's up where the cue ball.
Well, you know, from the center to the top is quite a bit. I mean, the distance in terms of what the cue ball's going to do. If you hit it maximum high, which would be, I would say, about right here. This would be maximum. If I went any higher, I'd miss cue, because you can see the cue slipping over the top. That's why it's so important to stay down and make a shot until you hit the ball at the back of the pocket. Because if you get into a habit of that, you're going to miss cue a lot and you're going to slide out. And that's one of the reasons it's important to have a tip that's rounded on the top. Because if you have a flat tip, it's going to slip off the top a lot easier. But how about a draw shot? Any guesses where the cue ball will go here? Pretty close to that pocket. And it would depend on how much I stroke it and how much angle I have. Like from here, I could draw it to there. But if I have a steeper angle like this, I probably could only draw it to the pocket. But I'll put it somewhere in between. So I'll go ahead and put backspin on this. And you can see how it beat the tangent line there. And, you know, this would be the drill in your handout to try. You know, practice pocketing the balls on your cut shots from here and here, but then try rolling ball, stun, and backspin draw. And you'll learn the three strokes, and then you'll begin to think, well, if I, you'll start playing with your friends, and you'll be able to know how to get positioned for the next ball. Any questions on any of that so far? All right, good. All right, you probably are wondering, do people really use all these diamonds around the table? Well, they're there for a purpose. In fact, I could spend like, I don't know how many hours, explaining the diamond system. I know with Tim I have here.
Yeah, he's helped me with that.
Anyway, it's very, very complicated. I'm not going to do, all that fancy stuff today. We're going to just do a few basic things. Now, a lot of people get into situations, for example, like this. Let's say you're playing a game of 8-ball, like this. And solids just missed. And you're kind of stuck behind these balls, and you have strikes, okay? And obviously you have a very difficult shot. How would you calculate making the 13 ball? This is just a basic diamond shot. But the pocket that you're trying to hit is always 0. 10, 20, 30, 40. Half of 40 is 20. 10, 20, 30, 40. So basically all I have to do is shoot a rolling ball right through the middle diamond to make the 13. And if I make the 13, I'll have a shot to win the game on the 8. But these are fun to practice because you've got to hit the cue ball in the middle. If you're off to the left or right, you're going to put English on the cue ball. So it's a great way to ensure that you're hitting the center of the ball. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. Thank you, Tom. All right. All right. What if somebody throws a wrench into the workings and you can't do that anymore? Say you have stripes and your cue ball's in the same position. Now what do I do? How do I make the 9 ball? Okay, say it louder now.
3 rails.
3 rails. Not, this is Nyla's 7th time taking class, or 6th? Okay. Anyways, now there's a very complicated system for determining this. But one thing to keep in mind, all tables are a little different, so you have to adapt and adjust to any particular table. But I've played on this table quite a bit, so I know approximately where to hit it. So if I go into the 2nd diamond with a little bit of running English, I should be able to call the 9 and make it on 3 rails. Let's see how I can do it. It's short. Now I learned that it came up a little short, so we're going to go a little past the 2nd diamond. And that's a fun thing to just try out. You know, just have some fun with it. And again, if you're not having fun in this class, let me know. That's the main prerequisite. All right, here's the last one. This is kind of a joke, but I thought you would enjoy this. I'm not sure I could make it, but you give it a shot. All right, say you're in this position, and you want to win the game. How would you make the 8 ball from here? Anybody have an idea?
I tried it the other night, and I did it.
You blew it?
I take my hand and knock the 8 ball.
All right. Well, there actually is a way, and I do have to drag a little bit. I actually made this shot in a bar in Yuma, Arizona, on the 8 ball. And the way to make it is, you have to shoot the cue ball about centered off this point, so the cue ball comes across and makes the 8.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I'll buy you a beer for that one.
Oh, okay. Is the bar open?
When it does, it's on me.
All right.
That's cool.
One more chance. I don't want to get too wound up in this. I hit that one too far on that side. Let's try here. And that looked real hard, but you know it wasn't that hard. The problem that people have with that, instead of jabbing the cue ball, they follow through and they double kiss. And that's the problem.
And there was no English, right? It
No
was
English.
straight.
No English. In fact, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that because we will cover English in class number 5, but you know, you really want to master what I call the vertical axis first. And I will explain how English works in class number 5. Now, let's just finish up with a quick game of 8-ball. But instead of using the whole rack, we're going to play a quick game of 8-ball with short rack, meaning 4 solids, 4 stripes, and the 8-ball.
This is another wonderful game. This is so much faster, so much more enjoyable than 15-ball 8-ball.
It is. In fact, especially for newcomers to the game, this game is a lot more fun. I totally agree with Carl.
Yeah.
In fact, on our class number 6, we're going to play short rack 8-ball. Carl and Chuck and I will be going around helping you, and we're going to have like a little bit of little tournament, which will handicap, based on level. But in short rack 8-ball, it really doesn't matter how you rack the balls, except you want the 8 in the middle. And you notice I have 4 solids and 4 stripes. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we'll be doing more of this next week. But I will show you how to break in, with a diamond rack. When the rack is racked like a diamond like this, you absolutely do want to break from one lane or the other lane. On this particular rack, I have a good chance of making the 12 in here and the 2 inside. If I break from dead center, oftentimes you lose control of the cue ball. You might scratch or run down the table. But this is a lot more accurate. And you'll notice I'll try to hit the 2 as solid as I can, but watch where the 2 and the 12 ball go. And again, just like any other shot, 3-shot routine, breathe and relax. Right toe, swing down. Take some nice warm-up strokes. Well, the 12 went straight in and the 2 hit right here. So you can see it's a very accurate way to hit the ball, when you have the balls racked that way. Now, when we play 15-ball, 8 balls, it's going to be totally different though. But I made a ball. Now, what you're going to learn in this class is international 8-ball rules, which means on the opening break, regardless of what ball I make, I still have not established stripes or solids. So it's still an open table. I did make, stripe. Right. But which looks better? Which way would you go? Good chance to.
Yeah, solid.
Solid.
And why?
Because they're more spread out, not against the rim.
Okay. Any other reasons? The first opening strike, you have to lean all the way over the table and you're jacked over the 2 ball. Does that make sense?
No, for a strike.
For a strike. Yep. But it's a lot. You don't have to reach over balls or reach as far for the 7 ball, and that's an easier shot.
Absolutely. Carl hit the nail on the head. The stripes are really difficult because the 14 is in a bad place to begin with. Because when you're shooting balls down the rail like that from an angle, that and then you compare it to solids, it's an easy opener. In fact, I can already see a little pattern. Guess what? If I make the 7, it leads to the 4. I make the 4, it leads to the 2. I make the 2, it leads to the 3. And guess what? That's my main shot. So the balls are kind of almost all set up, wide open. The only thing I have to decide is, how I want, what angles I want. I just want to roll this thing very gently and get almost straight in on the 4. Now, I just want to stun over just a little bit so I can make the 2 inside. Or I could draw back to the rail and